Paul Tassi wrote an article on it earlier this week. Of course, Paul did. About what do we know so far, and we've talked about some of them, like Whisper the Worm. We know is coming. Vex at the class. Doom Marchers. There's a few of those. Shatter Dive is getting a big nerf. Most of the patch is kind of a secret right now, though. So I'm very interested to see what happens there. Like, I'm kind of secretly hoping for an artifact reset, even though I don't think it's going to happen.
What if
I desperately want to use something other than Overload and Unstoppable mods?
What if the artifact for the 30th anniversary is like an elite skull?
So I was going to ask, do we think we're out of the TWAB now? We're out of the TWAB. That's all our scheduled content for tonight, aside from a couple questions and lore corner. Speculation time. Do we think we're actually getting an artifact with the 30th anniversary? Because that's not. We've had conflicting things. Bungie's been really mum on it. We're kind of just going off the leak, right? Of they claim there's going to be a separate season pass for this.
I don't think there's going to be a season pass for this.
I mean, if you're going to do an artifact, it would make sense.
But what do you do with the one that continues the rest of the season? Can you swap between them? You think they're going to try to do what Halo's going to do and let you swap between them?
I would think that you would have to introduce something akin to what Halo is going to do.
Or, since so many people are already close to the end of this season pass, you think they just add it on? You think they add like 50 levels to the end of this one?
I would be thrilled. I think the difficult part with that becomes because they would want to build. Again, we're going into purely speculative territory. Supposedly, the anniversary pack was going to have a season pass attached to it that was going to feature Oni armor
and Marathon
in it,
right?
Well, the Marathon armor, I believe we've seen, and that's going to be in the store. I don't know. We know that there's going to be some armor that's like just flat out given to us with the anniversary, because the anniversary pack is giving us a couple weapon skins. It's giving us the helmet skin, which at this point, the helmet mod that you're getting, if it's not Master Chief's helmet, you've just completely failed all of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing. If it's a universal helmet mod, that's the only thing I can possibly think of that it is.
Mm-hmm.
I believe a couple ships and some sparrows and some emotes are going to be a part of it also.
Mm-hmm. There has to be more Halo stuff involved in this, right? Like, it just feels like with Bungie's history, like that's where, like, I know people know that, like, no Marathon and no Oni and stuff, but Halo was Bungie until Destiny, right? Like, I mean,
you got to think that the Halo stuff is partially being kept on the down low by Bungie, because Bungie likes to surprise people. Look at how often we've gone into an event not knowing what's going to be available until the day that we load in.
Yeah.
Unless you have data miners, obviously. Look at how often we haven't been told things by Microsoft until the last minute. I think Microsoft probably wants all eyes on them for Halo's promotion. And so I think it is extremely possible we load in that morning, and that's when we see all the Halo content. Is when we load in. Because that's the day before Infinite then. It's the final push to get you pumped.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because right now they're rolling out short films for Infinite. They did the campaign overview. We're probably getting another one on the 15th. We got the IGN First series with Ryan McCaffrey going on. I wouldn't rule out one more flighting test, like maybe the week before Thanksgiving. The weekend before Thanksgiving. I would, or the weekend after. I wouldn't rule that out. There's so much coming. Like, Halo basically has an entire month to itself now to build up.
Yeah.
Now that Forza's out and Call of Duty will be out by the time you're listening to this.
Yeah.
Like, you got Battlefield, but I think the hype for Battlefield kind of tapered off after that absolutely atrocious beta.
Yeah. That and the delay, right? Like,
and the delay
company with the delay, like, when it was supposed to come out would have been the perfect time for that game to come out. And now that it's just lost in the shuffle, and Halo basically being free to play and Call of Duty being Call of Duty, and it's just it feels lost again, So
unfortunately, and that's a shame, because I really like Battlefield, but I did not enjoy my time in that beta at all.
Yeah.
I think that you've got an interesting firestorm here, though, and we know that Microsoft and Bungie are real close. I mean, there's the possibility that we see something on Halo on the actual 20th anniversary of Halo on the 15th of this month that maybe Bungie goes, hey, we not only want to celebrate, we have an anniversary coming up that we're starting to celebrate in December, but this is the 20th anniversary of our best known game, of the game that built Bungie, essentially, and the house that built Xbox. Like we wanted to have something to celebrate. Like we seen the cosmetics for Master Chief Collection this week, and they're all so good.
The Xbox and the Duke shoulder pads are so cool.
The Duke shoulder pads are great. The knitted grunt backpack.
Yeah.
And I love the Orion armor is what I really want. The armor from the very first Halo reveal.
That's from like the third person like weird thing, right?
That is from the 1999 debut of Halo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back when Halo was going to be an RTS.
God, dude, remember that? Oh my gosh.
It went from an RTS to a third-person shooter to an FPS. And who would have... I went back and read the classic review that Game Informer did, and Andy McNamara and Andrew Reiner in their review and in the second opinion both are like, we never could have guessed this. It's etched into my mind forever. I know we're getting off Destiny here. We're talking about a little bit of Halo.
I mean, we're going to talk about Halo on this show coming up, guys. I mean, it's going to happen,
I'll never forget the month that the GameCube and the Xbox came out, November 2001. I got my Game Informer and I'm reading it, and I got to Game of the Month. And going in, I didn't know anything about Halo. I was 9 years old. I didn't play shooters. I wasn't allowed to play shooters. And I was hyped up on getting a GameCube. I was begging for one for Christmas that year. I really wanted it. I wanted it for Star Wars Rogue Leader and for Smash Brothers. But I knew enough about games at that point and I knew how Game of the Month worked. Like, it's totally going to be Luigi's Mansion. That's got to be what it is. And the paragraph that opened their review section that month is etched in my mind forever. 3 months ago, if you would have told us that we would be picking Halo Combat Evolved over Luigi's Mansion for Game of the Month in November 2001, we probably would have laughed you out of the room. Yet, that's exactly what has happened here. And Gene Park of the Washington Post kind of brought this up earlier today. He was talking about, he ranked the Metroid games for a feature. And he was saying, Metroid Prime is his best Metroid game because aside from Doom and Halo, that's probably the most influential FPS ever made. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it came out a year after Halo did and still did something completely different. It told a completely different type of story, different interactivity than anything we'd seen in an FPS so far. FPSs used to just be like, oh, pick up a gun and shoot things. Halo challenged that notion, and especially with the multiplayer.
Right.
And then, Metroid Prime goes on to that, how those two kind of duel back and forth. You look at the release schedules for them, both of their sequels come out in 2004. You have Metroid Prime 2 and Halo 2 come out within a week of each other, which are two of my favorite games ever made. And then in 2007, you have the same thing with Halo 3 and with Metroid Prime Corruption, and which I was definitely less than thrilled with. But by that point, I was like, I'm not playing shooters on the Wii. It's been 8 months. I'm not playing a shooter.
To be fair,
school for Halo
I think if Metroid Prime 3 would have had normal controls, it would have been better. I definitely think
if you would have had something like the Pro Controller, then it would have done wonders for that game.
Like, it's definitely. I still feel like it might be the weakest of the Prime trilogy.
Oh, it is. It's not even a question.
But it's still it still would have been way better with the controller.
Yeah, it's still a great game. We look at things like that, and I find it impossible to think that Bungie's not going to celebrate the game that made them, even though they don't own it anymore. They clearly, the people who work at Bungie and who work at 343 clearly still have a lot of strong connections. Most of the people who wanted Bungie to split off have since left. Or they were in junior positions at the time. People like, Luke Smith. We talked about Luke Smith a lot. Luke Smith had just started working at Bungie when they split off from Microsoft. And look at him now. Now he's the franchise director of Destiny. This dude was their community manager and podcast producer in 2006, 2007. Don't ever tell me you can't do something and you can't make it in this industry. That's a success story right there. But
I mean, you think about it, in the early 2000s, he was writing he was working for PC Gamer? Or who was he working for?
EGM.
EGM. Yeah. So, I mean, talk about somebody who was on one side and made it on the other. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's like, so I find it impossible to believe that like so many of these people owe their career. Like Lucas talked about it extensively. He did a great interview with Kinda Funny. I don't remember if it was last year or if it was when Shadowkeep came out, but he did a great one-on-one with Greg Miller. And he basically was like, I owe my entire career to this game. I owe my career in gaming to Halo. Like, yes, I was a writer and this and that, but he's like, I was obsessed with Halo and with Halo 2. He's like, he was one of the first guys to do the Scarab gun. Mm-hmm. And like I remember reading about that. I remember seeing that on X-Play and whatnot, like back on classic G4. I remember seeing that on X-Play and God, what was they had one that was like game tips and tricks or something. I can't remember the name of the actual show, but I'm pretty sure they talked about an Attack of the Show at some point. It's just all these old shows, and like so many of us we're into Destiny because we were huge Halo fans.
Right.
Like it would just be a disservice if we get through this and like.
That's the only reason why I picked up Destiny, right? Because I was huge Bungie and a huge Halo fan, and this was Bungie's new IP, right? It wasn't Halo, but it was like, oh man, Bungie's making a new IP. Let's go check it out.
My exact words when I stepped into the Cosmodrome for the first time and played it was, "This is Halo movement perfected."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is the Halo control scheme perfected to me because, God, I like 343 a lot. I love how Master Chief Collection handles. I love the Halo Infinite flight. Nobody does gunplay like Bungie. Mm-hmm. Nobody. Mm-hmm. Nobody makes guns feel as unique as Bungie does. And just them having like this massive sandbox to play with. It's like well, we're going to dwell a little bit more on this as we get closer to the 30th anniversary, and I'm sure after we play it.
Right.
But I know that's been kind of a hot topic in the community is what are we actually going to see from Halo? We kind of know what we're seeing from the other franchises. We don't really know. Like Halo, we just know a couple like class armor items. Like what else are we actually going to get here? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something they want to keep very secret because they know, we all know also, no matter how little or how much they do, it's not going to be enough for a very vocal part of this fan base.
Right.
And not just the Destiny fan base, the Halo fan base also. Like, oh, you took too much. And the Destiny fan base, oh, you didn't give us enough. Like, we grew up playing Halo. Like, a lot of it, we're adults with, careers and children now. But we grew up doing LAN parties. Mm-hmm. The early days of Xbox Live.
Oh my gosh, dude. LAN parties were crazy. And, like, I'll save those stories for when we get into Halo stuff, but man, LAN parties for Halo 1, man. Oh man.
Ooh, Corey,